Hello and welcome to Just One Thing for Parents. I'm Bettina Hohnen. Today I interviewed Lorraine Candy. Lorraine is a journalist, a mother of four, and author of the best-selling book, What's Wrong With You, which is an award-winning book about parenting teenagers. She joined me to answer the question, what's just one thing that can help parents understand why their teens appear to suddenly hate them? It's a struggle that really many parents face, that feeling of kind of rejection and uselessness when our sweet kids transform, sometimes seemingly overnight, into teenagers who can say and do hurtful things. And having been through this herself, Lorraine has so many great ideas for how to think about this and what you can do. So whether you're in the thick of it right now or whether you're bracing yourself for what's to come, please have a listen. This episode is filled with wisdom and humor and some real world advice. So please keep listening to my interview with Lorraine Candy. So hello and welcome, Lorraine. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh, it's lovely to be here. I hope I can be as helpful as possible.
Yeah. So the question for you is, what's just one thing that can help parents understand why their teens appear to suddenly hate them? And maybe you could start by just saying a little about why you chose this as a question.
I chose this as a question because I have four children, and when the eldest hit her teenage years, they're now 23, 21, 18, and 14. But about, when she hit 12, I couldn't understand why this girl who I'd been the center of her world suddenly couldn't bear to hear me breathing, couldn't bear to have me in the room, seemed to be being really mean to me. And I just thought, what the hell is going on here? So I started to investigate it as a journalist. I wrote a book, Mum, What's Wrong With You? Because she kept saying, what's wrong with you? Every time I tried to do something nice. And I focused on teenage girls because I had two teenage girls at the time. And I wanted to answer the question because I knew it couldn't possibly be just personality or temperament, because loads of mothers, I've got quite a big social media following, were saying, I feel the same. My WhatsApp group was full of, I feel the same. I've done something terrible. It's so depressing. The child that loved me doesn't love me anymore. And obviously none of that is true. And what I found out was it's physiological. It's not just hormones. That's a bit of an old narrative. And that there was a lot of work going on around neuroscience and how the teenage brain was developing. So you've written a book on it, as you know, between the ages of 12 and about 25, the brain's been taken apart. It's incredibly plastic and it's being put together again. So it's not, in layman's terms, it's not working like an adult's brain. So when they do really silly things, they don't know they're doing it. When they have a gigantically messy bedroom, they may not be able to see it. And when they're being incredibly mean to you, they're dealing with a whole load of feelings they've never dealt with before. They've got to give these feelings to someone responsible. They got to give them to you. And also they're separating from you. Once I knew all of that, the physiological, neurological and emotional thing, I was able to step back and felt much more relaxed about it. And I stopped taking it personally, which I think may be more of a maternal thing to do. I had put in so much effort, I felt, and so much love, and something had gone wrong. And actually, perhaps I'm Gen X, I'm 57. My mindset was a little bit, it's your fault. What have you done? Is it because you were a working mother? Is it because you were a candidate? And I think that narrative was unhelpful as well. So once I knew why it was happening, I thought, well, why hasn't anyone told me?
Yeah.
Why don't they have NCT for teenagers? Why don't they give you maternity leave when you've got teenagers? Because it's much more helpful than when it's babies. Babies just want people to love them. Teenagers only need you.
Yes, so true. And I think, well, we literally didn't know until the turn of the century. It was about 2000 that people started.
Yeah, see, we say turn of the century, we think 1900, don't we?
Yeah, we do.
2000. I think probably say around the 2000s is probably.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And when they began to scan the brains of teenagers, of typically developing teenagers, and they said, oh, wait a minute, there's something really big going on here that we didn't realize was there before. But I love that reframe, just reframing it is so helpful, isn't it? It changes our relationship to their behavior completely.
Yes, and I also learnt, if the brain is changing, when other parts of life does your brain change? And something really important that I learned for women is your brain goes through a similar process in perimenopause when the estrogen and testosterone, that all starts disappearing or fluctuating. So you might be, as a parent, in a fluctuating brain place yourself with a child in a fluctuating brain place. So if you don't know it, it can be quite a shock. And I think the moment you know it, you can do that thing where you don't blame yourself and you can take a beat, learn to breathe, get in some coping strategies. I learned a lot about, often the teenage conscience doesn't really kick in for about 24 hours. So they
Right.
may seem incredibly unhelpful and not loving. And you
Mm.
may be having a big old argument in that point, but they're not going to take it in. So there's no point trying to have a logic discussion in that moment of heat and brain not working, your brain, their brain. 24 hours later, the teenage brain has had a bit of time to process it. So then you might be able to step in and say, okay, you know what happened yesterday?
Yeah.
Can we talk about it? And
Yeah.
that I think was really helpful for me to learn. It just changed my behavior around their behavior.
Yeah. Oh, because one of the things we know about the teenage brain is that there's these heightened emotions. So the emotional brain,
Yeah.
hormones influx the brain, and the emotional brain, the lower bit of the brain, goes into overdrive. While this frontal bit that does all the regulation can't quite catch up in those emotional moments.
What isn't working? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I love that, just giving it a bit of space, saying don't take it personally. Why do you think it kind of feels so attacking though, that it does sometimes feel like they don't like us?
Yes, I think, I mean, I hate to generalize because all teenagers are different. They're all neurologically different. And I'm not talking about teenagers with more diverse, neurodiverse needs. But it feels very, I think there's been so much love in that kind of period I think they call it latency. There's been so much love, and suddenly the love is just not there. And I think as a woman, perhaps, but I know my husband felt it as well, you feel all, I think subconsciously this giant separation is about to occur and this individuation is about to occur. And I feel it's a little bit of a living loss. You had something so amazing that really powered you and fueled you emotionally. And now it's not amazing. And they start to see you as a human, not just as a mum. They start to see you as an adult. They see your failings, all of which is good and they should be seeing because you don't want them to feel that they need to be perfect. And this exchange of complicated emotions starts to happen. But you've got an adult brain and they haven't got an adult brain, so they can't deal with it. I learned a really good thing about externalizing, which I think it's a word used in psychology. So they've got all these, it's like they're at the top of the stairs and you're holding their emotions are the marbles and then the lid comes off and they all fall down the stairs. And there's all sorts of emotions. They're terribly, they sort of deal with the good emotions, but they really don't know what to do with the stuff that's frazzling them, these overwhelmingly powerful bad emotions. And they can't give it to their peers who are incredibly important to them because they're going through the same process. So they literally, like a pile of awful washing, just hand it to you. So they're testing out all the horrors of the stuff they're feeling by being pretty mean to you because they know you're probably going to be there and watching your reaction to see what would happen if they did that elsewhere, if they did that outside of the house. Because there is this theory of the kind of, the angel and the devil. They are unbearably mean to you at home. But you'll get a call from another mum saying, gosh, your daughter's so understanding and empathetic and lovely. And you'll think, what, that she's not. She's terrible. She's really mean to me. That she's not testing her emotions on that person because that person's not doesn't have the greatest love of all for her. So it's that. So, they're handing you something to deal with. And once you know that, you can think, okay, well, I can set some boundaries about how that's handed to me, but I will just suck it up. And I will just learn what they're going through and observe and kind of be curious about how they're dealing with it. Because each teenager deals with this in a very different way. I've noticed the temperament of my, having four has been very, very different. I have a son as well. So I've had a very different experience with my son than I've had with my three girls. So it's a constant learning curve. And I also feel that there's such a lot of instruction out there for parents at the moment that it's really overwhelming, that actually very simply taking a step back, thinking the brains aren't quite working, they're physiologically full of hormones, that's affecting them as well. Where can I meet them here that I'm comfortable with and they're comfortable with? And you can't make it better all the time. Sometimes they can be sad and you don't need to label that and solve it. I also learned you don't fix it. This
Yeah.
is a learning curve for them. So don't fix it. Let them feel it and just say, I'm listening to you.
Yeah. They're practicing relationships, aren't they? And
Hmm,
sometimes,
that's painful.
professionals will say to parents, it's because they feel safe with you that they say these horrible things, which, and you're like, well, whatever. I don't want, it doesn't feel very nice in the moment. But it actually is a bit of an honor. It's like, I can practice this with you because I know how much you love me and I know that you've got my back.
Yeah.
Um,
And then you should feel like, well, this is parenting. And I always say it's like one of my kids is a big Star Wars fan. This is your Jedi level now. This is I don't think newborn is tough. I don't think toddlers are tough. I think Jedi level is teenage parenting because it's so personal and it's specific to you. So you've done really well if they've been particularly unpleasant to you for a sustained amount of time.
Yeah. And I love what you say about we should have an NCT for parenting teenagers because it's a whole new game. It really is completely different. And a whole new set of skills are required. But what would you say to parents about, the horrible things that they said?
Yeah.
You say leave it, or would you say at another time come back and talk about it?
Yeah, I think what I've learned through personal experience, through talking to experts, is somebody once said to me, a psychologist, you don't have to let them be salty.
Right.
So I think for me, where are your boundaries? What things bother you particularly? I didn't like a lot of the language that was used around me. I thought, okay, particularly hurts me to feel useless, or to be made fun of for having, I have no qualifications, educational quality, or any of that kind of thing. I thought, okay, right. Okay, we will sit and let it cool down. 24 hours later, I will say, not face to face. I will just be chatting in the kitchen, making a cup of tea, and I'll say, look, can you not use that tone with me? Can you not use that language? Can you imagine how that made me feel? But and sometimes if I felt it was particularly rude or a real boundary about times coming home, all of that had been broken because I'd set the boundaries I felt confident with, because boundaries are really helpful for teenagers. They feel very lost without them. I would say, okay, so now I'm afraid that means you can't go out for the next 3 nights. That's done because I didn't enjoy, I don't do it in the moment. I didn't do it in the moment because that never really landed. I just waited 24 hours. And, sometimes you get it right, sometimes you get it wrong. I had a real boundary around, letting me know if they were going to be really late. I would negotiate the time with them instead of setting the time. But if they were later than that and they hadn't let me know, then I'd say, okay, well, that's it. We had this boundary. And they're always moving the boundaries as they get older. It's
Yeah.
not the same for an 18-year-old as it is for a 14-year-old. And I was very specific right the way to the age of sort of 17, 18 about phones in bedrooms. No, just never going to happen overnight
Mm.
or on their own. I just said, that's our boundary. No phones at the dinner table. Those are our boundaries. So the language around it bothered me. So, but I did always take 24 hours or picked a better time to talk about it, which was a learning curve, I think. Because you do have to set boundaries. You're not their best friend. You're the adult in the room. And if you don't set a boundary, they have nothing to lean against and they feel really unsafe. And, it's not gentle parenting to leave it a while or what, all these labels around parenting at the moment, very unhelpful. Your family, your boundaries, your specific teenager. For one teenager, it's slightly different from the other because they're different personalities.
I love what you said about values because I think
Yes.
it's important to sit down when there's no emotion around you with a partner, perhaps, and to think what is the most important thing to me, because you can't do everything. Even
No.
coming up with three and saying, okay, as I'm bringing up my teen, these are the three things that I really want to teach them. And those are the things that I'm going to push back on. And, maybe phones in the room or integrity or whatever it is.
Yeah.
These are the things that are important to me. And then you have that solidly in your head when you're setting the boundaries and when you're dealing with their emotion. So,
Yes, and culturally, it's different in different families. It's different for Asian families, perhaps from the way we, and for Jewish families, and for, I interviewed a lot of parents who's of black children, and that's a very different thing. Bringing up a black teenage girl is quite different because there are a lot more things to worry about, the kind of hypersexualization and the kind of way that your girls are treated in society. So we all need to define those values
yeah,
as a family, I think, and particularly with partners, because I often felt, oh, this is my responsibility because
Yeah.
I'm the mum, she's the girl. This is what I talk about. But actually, for things like periods, I made my husband have some of those conversations because I didn't want them to just think they had to keep it secret because I'd grown up in the magazine world where we hid our tampons when we went to the toilet. That's ridiculous, that kind. So had moments where, but you do really need, as you say, to set them with your partner. Otherwise, it's confusing for the teenager.
Yeah. The other thing that I just want to pick up on that I think is so great about what you said is that actually it is often quite important to come back and to say to your teen, it actually was quite hurtful when you said that,
Yes.
give them that feedback and know that actually teenagers feel a lot of shame from those things that they say. It's much easier often to be angry and just to externalize rather than to feel the pain that they feel because they're going through so much. They might have felt really rejected by a friend or anxious about something. They've got a lot going on and it's much easier to kind of blurt and be angry, but then they do feel bad about it. So it's almost, if you see it as by coming back and talking about it, you're giving them an opportunity to do a bit of a repair. And that's good for them. It's good for you. And it's also a great teaching for them.
Yes, I think they can process it, but slower than we can process it.
Yeah.
And they have a different language around a lot of things. They have a different belief system based on what they're doing with their peers and things as well. So it's being curious and open to listening to them and not sort of stepping in and saying, you're not trying to fix it or make them a different personality. Some teenagers are more introvert and they will find it difficult to explain their fear. Learning that anger is like a masking emotion for fear was very important to me as well. This fury that one of my teenagers had was really volcanic, and I was just thinking, well, perhaps maybe this teenager is just not a very nice person. I don't know what,
Right.
but actually, that's not true. That's a very fearful teenager using anger in a way to mask not being able to say, I'm really scared of this friendship situation, or I'm really scared about what's going on, or whether I'll get my grades, or whether I get. So, all of those is just a massive learning curve, I think. And you learn a lot parenting teenagers, but it feels a shock, I think, because between sort of I guess 4 and 11, it has been quite nice.
Yeah, yeah. They call them the gold. What did you got? I think they're called the golden years.
Yeah, they're the golden years. You're in the thick of it thinking, oh, I've got the hang of this. Yeah.
Yeah. The other thing I really love the idea of is that emotions like to be shared. And actually, sometimes when a teenager is feeling something really intensely, they want somebody else to feel it too. So that's when they will say those horrible things and like, you feel as bad as I do. It's not
Yes.
conscious. That's all completely unconscious. But if you can have that in your head, I think it's so helpful to deal with it.
Yeah. And I think it makes your day a bit easier, which is why they say pick your battles. And it's never truer than the teenage years. I don't care about a messy bedroom. Why would that be a problem to me that I'm not in it? As long as it's hygienic, it's fine. But I do care about in London, where are they after 11 p.m. at night? That really worried me. That was a thing that worried me. And what they could potentially be seeing on their smartphones overnight really, really worried me. So they, that's it. Yeah, they are sharing their emotions with you because they want you to feel the extreme intensity. I had no idea how intense those emotions were, and they will be as intense about, a lost eyeliner
Yes.
as something horrific happening in the playground at school. It's a very strong feeling either way. And you can dismiss it and say, oh, well, you'll just find another one, or you'll just, but actually there's a reason and there's a lot of cognitive stuff happening. And I think it's exhausting, but sort of
Yeah.
being there for it. That's
Yeah.
why it's so hard, I think. But also there is the real joy of watching a personality come together, sort of come into focus in front of you. I mean, that I just think that's the biggest privilege in the world to see an adult forming, and you've had a part of that, and you can make it easier, and you can be as much a coach as parent.
Yeah.
That to me feels absolutely amazing. And there's such a negative narrative around it because it is a bit challenging. But you've got to dig deep as a person
Yeah.
and really apply yourself with the teenage years. And I think that's where the parenting comes in, isn't it? But it's joyous to watch them develop into adults.
Yeah. I love that. So if I could ask you just to pick just one thing that can help parents understanding, why these teens appear to suddenly hate them, what would that one thing be?
This phrase, rupture and repair. The
Uh-huh.
rupture is not bad.
Mhm.
If you don't repair it, that's where the problems may issue. So any rupture that happens, learn how to say sorry because you may have to say sorry. Give it 24 hours and repair. That journey from rupture to repair is brilliant, brilliant, brilliant for parents. And I think we often think we've had this terrible row, it's gone terribly wrong, there's a horrible atmosphere in the house, we are the worst parents. That's where the learning happens and the best parenting happens. Going back in, chatting, apologizing, working at what's going on, meeting them where they are. They're all at different stages. That rupture and repair was so important to learn for me. It's not bad to have the rupture, but the repair is where you learn everything as a parent of teenagers.
Amazing. Lorraine, thank you so much for joining me today. That was so great.
Thank you.